Hi, everyone, and welcome to Pit Stop Episode 3. Today we have Andy Newen on the show, and we're talking about something that's really near and dear to my heart and something that I've struggled with a lot, and we're talking about rejection. So, Andy, how you doing?
I'm doing amazing, man. The sun is shining right now. I'm sitting in my bedroom where I kind of made this little altar slash shrine work area for myself, and I'm a happy guy. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Nice. I'm very good. It's funny how much your mood improves just with a little sun, huh? Not
It's
dealing,
crazy. Yeah.
yeah, not dealing with tons of snow anymore, and so hoping that it'll stick with us. So
Yeah, man. And I think the grass is turning a little bit of green from what I'm seeing right now, too, which is a good sign. So sunshine and some green, and away we go, right? Summer's here.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, like I said, today I wanted to talk to you about rejection and something that we've talked about, a little bit in the past, specifically dealing in relationships, but I want to kind of broaden that a little bit too. And so I
Definitely.
guess just first off, when I just say rejection and dealing with rejection in one's life, what comes to mind for you?
Well, first of all, like when I hear the word rejection, I actually feel it in my body first, and it kind of it's a good thing. It triggers past experiences because I think we all go through rejection in one form or another, in one way or another, and at some point or many points in our lives, right?
For sure.
Yeah, and so yeah, what comes to me is how my body is reacting to that word, and also the thought of rejection is universal, meaning everyone experiences it, and rejection is also necessary, which I can get into later.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it is something that is a little bit new to me as well, but I think a new idea for a lot of people of feeling it in your body. Can you just explain a little bit of what you mean by that?
Yeah, so feeling any sort of experience in your body is attached to some sort of a past experience or maybe a past trauma.
Okay.
And for me, I can only speak to my own self, right? For me, whenever I think about rejection or maybe a past experience pertaining rejection, I feel it in my breath. So I feel my breath shorten, kind of like oh damn, like here it comes again, you know,
Gotcha. Yeah.
kind of like bracing for it in some sort of a way. So it's an interesting sensation, to be honest.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so now, in your opinion, why do you think that people struggle with rejection?
I think that's a great question, Jared. I think a multitude of things. It's like I think people are afraid of rejection because they're afraid of not being accepted for who they are.
For sure.
I think that's a big one. Yeah. What comes up for you? What comes up for you?
Yeah, really similar actually for me. And once I started digging into it, it was the realization that for me, whenever I thought of being rejected or was rejected, no matter what it was, my mind automatically went to it's because you're not good enough.
Yeah.
Right? And so it was for me in my thinking, it was a direct reflection of my self worth that again, I was rejected because I wasn't good enough, no matter the situation.
Yeah. I wasn't good enough, or I didn't do enough, or I didn't say the right thing, or I said the wrong things or did the wrong things, right?
Exactly, yeah, and replaying that tape player in your mind of if only I would have done this, or if only I was like this, and then kind of falling into that rabbit hole was and is like still an issue that I deal with too, and so um, yeah, I think it's a really tough subject for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think people like it's tough. And I think people avoid having these types of conversations, which is why it's so great that you're bringing this up as a part of your journey, as a part of yeah, inquiry and reflection, man. Like kudos to you for picking these sensitive topics and getting into it because it's so important. It's so important.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. And when I was thinking about it, and I realized I think that a lot of people will, like just like you said, will avoid situations where, there's that opportunity for rejection. And so instead of even trying, they'll just go, well, I'm going to go do something else, or I won't do that because I'll probably get rejected, or just the fear that it's there just stops them completely. And so, helping people get over that is something that I think is huge.
Yeah, I love that. It's a really great point that that rejection is so closely tied to inaction.
For sure.
I don't want to go through that again, or I don't want to feel that again. And
Oh, for sure.
it keeps us not moving forward and not growing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think those are just like you said, those are exactly the types of situations that allow for growth.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so like you said before, you think that rejection is a necessary part of life.
absolutely. Yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
Yeah. So what I mean by that, and I've come to that conclusion through my own life rejections.
Okay.
And it's an interesting observation because I would do a timeline of my life, which I do every year. Kind of look back at the years to come, or sorry, I look back at the years that have already passed, and
Yeah.
I do a timeline of events. And so many of those events were either macro, like bigger rejections, and then also micro rejections. And the reason why I feel that it's necessary is because on the other side of rejection, if we're conscious and aware of it, is actually an opportunity to learn and to grow and to deepen not only our relationship with ourselves, but also the relationship we have with other people. And it kind of goes back to this principle that I heard this principle about 2 or 3 years ago,
Okay.
and I believe it was coming out of some sort of a breakup, or I kind of forget where it came from, but I remember hearing this and really resonating with it. And the line was, rejection is just redirection.
Interesting.
I'll say that one more time, just
Yeah.
for people for that to land, right? It's like, rejection is just redirection. Is
I
that,
like that a lot.
yeah. And it's like when we get a no from somebody, or when we get rejected from someone, it could also be possible that that event or that experience is pivoting you to something better, or something
Gotcha.
more aligned. And when I when I adopted that principle in my life and really sat with it and experimented with it the next time I got rejected in some sort of way, it really helped me come to peace, and it really helped enhance a lot of feelings of gratitude for that experience, even though it could be painful, even though it
Hmm.
was a flat out no or a slap in the face. So whether it be like a job opportunity turning you down, or a romantic partner breaking up with you, or a business deal that didn't go the way you wanted it to, it's pivoting you to something that's more aligned.
For sure.
Yeah.
I like that a lot, actually. And which kind of led into my next question, which you've already sort of answered here, is
Mm.
just your relationship with rejection now, and how it's changed over time. Of have you ever struggled with it? Where are you at with it now? Everything like that.
Yeah. My personal experience with it is directly it's directly associated with what you shared around self-worth.
Okay.
Whenever in the past, whenever I got rejected, and even moments these days too, you kind of have that reaction, that emotional body reaction to it is, well, what did I do wrong?
Yes.
Or what's wrong with me, or what could I have done better? And it's always a lot of self-referencing, which I think could be very disempowering at the end of the day. A lot of self-referencing about me, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always made it about, whenever I got rejected, I always made it about myself.
Yeah.
And I had to ask myself, why? Why do I keep on making it about myself? And is there a possibility where I cannot make it about myself and zoom out a little bit and look at this as a bigger picture, that it's working, this rejection is working for me and not against me. And yeah, like totally about me. Like, I'm not good enough. That was a big thing that I actually had to not deal with, but like heal the last couple of years actually. So
Okay. And how, how did you start healing that? Was it, zooming out and taking a bigger, taking that big picture look at it, or were there some other strategies that you did?
yeah, great question too. Yeah, like zooming out is one thing, and people can do that through meditation and journaling. That's probably the simplest ways.
Yeah.
I dove into this a little bit with therapy. I
Okay.
I hired a therapist 2 years ago now, and it was an amazing experience with him. And just having someone there listening to you and then asking you questions and then offering another perspective.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh, well, damn, I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The second, or the third, I should say, the third resource that really benefited me was a men's group. And I
Okay.
think that was very powerful to be able to speak out my truth of what I'm feeling in that moment, and then get instant feedback from the trusted men around me, being like, "Nah, man, you're crazy." That's the thing
Yeah.
about a men's group, right? It's pretty, right? It's pretty
Yeah.
direct.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, no, dude, you're in your head, buddy. Get out.
Yeah. 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 I love that you said that. And so, I mean, really, really similar for myself of just having that outside sounding board, and that outside perspective of, just being able to almost call you out on it and be like, no, like you sound crazy right now. Like it makes no sense what you're saying. For me, the first, the first thing that I started with when starting to deal with rejection was as well when I had a conversation with my therapist, and
Yeah.
we talked about it. And in my mind, it was 100% I was not good enough. There was no outside possibilities that it could be anything else. Right. Which again, sounds crazy saying it out loud. And she kind of flipped it on me and she went, well, have you ever said no to anybody or rejected anybody before in your life? I was like, well, yeah, obviously, like everybody says no in one situation or another.
Yeah.
She said, well, why? Was it because you didn't think that they were good enough? Or were there other reasons? And so,
Oh.
well, no, of course there are other reasons. Like, like that's a terrible thing to think about somebody. You're just like, oh, you're not good enough. So, like I want nothing to do with you. And she said, well, is it outside the realm of possibilities that, maybe they had other reasons for rejecting you? That it actually had nothing to do with you, maybe. And literally even just going into some of the examples of like, say romantically of being, well, maybe they had a boyfriend. Maybe they were just tired. Maybe they had a terrible week and literally did not want to talk to anybody right then. And it didn't matter who came up to them. They were going to brush them off. Right. And so starting down that thought process of, what, there are an infinite amount of reasons of why somebody could reject you, and it actually having nothing to do with you or being good enough.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
good, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to share a story.
I'd love you to. Yeah.
Yeah, pertaining to this situation. It was about a year and a half ago. I went on this yoga retreat on Vancouver Island.
Okay.
And it was like a 3-day yin yoga retreat, and a part of the retreat was a bunch of lectures that we were a part of. And during this one hour, on the last day of the retreat, the yoga and meditation instructor of the retreat, she was sharing a story about something similar to rejection and experiencing pain in our lives. And the story it's actually an old Buddhist tale, and I can't recite the entire story exactly, but it went along the lines of that when we journey in life, we're going to be hit with arrows. That's kind of the risk we take when we venture out into the unknown. And the arrows kind of represent the pain that we are dealt when we get into a relationship.
Okay.
And so, for example, when someone breaks up with you or someone rejects you, it's an arrow, right? It's like, boom, hits you, ouch. You feel that arrow, you remove the arrow, and it heals and you move on, right?
Yeah.
However, what a lot of humans, and I would love to say that they love to do this because it's habitual, even though it feels bad. But what they end up doing is they take that arrow and then they stab themselves two or three more times.
Interesting.
And the second blow or the third blow of that arrow is self-dealt. And that symbolizes what we're talking about of I'm not good enough. What's wrong with me? I'm not a good boyfriend, or I'm a shitty coworker,
Yeah.
or whatever, right? It's like the first blow of the arrow is enough. And it's natural. It's going to be dealt in life. It happens. We'll remove the arrow and we'll let the wound heal. And if it happens again, it happens again, out of our control. However, to take the arrow and to stab ourselves another time, a third time, a fourth time, representing those self-referencing thoughts of I'm not good enough, is only going to, at the end of the day, kill us. And we'll bleed out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Like that I've never heard it, articulated like that before, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah, and it's kind of insanity, isn't it? It's like to take the arrow and
Yeah.
to jab yourself again and again and again.
Yeah. And almost just when you're talking about that, what comes to mind is it almost hurts more when you're stabbing yourself too, right? Is you have that initial pain, but then when you're doing it to yourself, it's that additional on top of it, which makes it even more painful. It makes you fear being hit by another arrow.
Oh my God, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
You train your body to be off. Yeah, it can go two ways, I think. It could be like what you just said, that we fear getting hit by another arrow,
Yeah.
or we make that pain a part of our identity.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? We make that pain a part of our identity, and we go seeking arrows to hit us now because we think that that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yes. Very, very interesting. I really like that anecdote.
It can go both ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, going back to something that you said a little bit earlier, and not necessarily on the same topic here, but something that I think is very, very interesting and something that I experienced and did for the first time was when you're talking about doing a timeline of your life, right? So I did an exercise out of a book that I'm reading, Conscious Loving, where same thing, you do a timeline of your life from the day that you were born to today. And you put one little tick on there for every year that you've been alive. I think so. The biggest realization for me doing that was the midpoint. And it was funny because I had never had a visual representation of my life like that. And going and seeing like, holy shit, like when the halfway point of my life was when I was 13. Like, I think I was in grade 8. And to think about that was half of my life and I was only 13, like blew my mind. And just seeing that physical representation, it really gave me a lot of hope for the future of, okay, well, a lot of the things that I view in my life as like big achievements or accomplishments, whatever they might be, have really only happened in the last, couple of years in a very small portion of my life. And so I really like that you do that. Because of the experience that I had with it. And the exact exercise that I did was basically you drew next vertical lines up and down. So up for positive experiences in your life and down for negative experiences. And the longer the line, the more it affected you. And so, yeah, it was a really cool exercise. And also, I guess the other one being, there aren't actually that many, you know, events in your life that that you put on that timeline. Like only the biggest events go on that timeline.
Mm-hmm.
But it also helps you put into perspective of, well, that means a lot of the things in the grand scheme of things don't actually matter that much. So going back to the rejection, if I get turned down from that job or by that person, it's not even going to make the timeline in my life. It's just, it happened. Yes. But it's not this huge thing that a lot of times we make it out to be.
No, it isn't. Yeah, we tend to make mountains out of molehills a lot.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we tend to make mountains out of molehills. We blow it up bigger than it actually is most of the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, or go ahead.
I was gonna say I really love the way you approach the timeline. I might try that myself.
Yeah, it's really cool. I might send you that exercise just to give you an actual explanation of how it went. But yeah, so something else that we've already sort of touched on is I find it interesting to look at people in different areas of their lives and dealing with rejection. And so, like, have you seen a difference in people on how they respond to rejection in a professional setting versus a personal setting? And, like examples of people being really good with it in one area of their life, but then really bad with it in another area.
Yeah, man. From what I've witnessed myself, like experienced myself, and what I've witnessed professionally as well, as the topic of love, like romance and rejection,
Yeah.
is a big one. It's a
Oh,
common
for sure.
people can handle a job rejection a lot easier than they can handle love rejection. And I still haven't come down to a conclusion of what exactly that may be. Contributing factors, I should say.
Yeah.
But I do know with job opportunities, depending on where you live in the world, obviously, there's an abundance of opportunities. You can knock one door here and one door there. But when it comes to love, I feel like for some people, there's this scarcity mindset around it.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, like, when you get rejected by one person, you feel like you'll be alone forever, and there's no one else that could get you the same way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And with love, there's just so much more chemicals involved in our brain and our body around magnifying, kind of like what we just said around the mole and the mountain, right? The molehill and the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
We magnify a lot of things with love, and it seems so, in the moment, it seems so devastating, and that there's nobody else that could ever understand us, ever. However, there is an abundance of people out there that are a good match, and I just see a lot of it in love, man. Does that answer your question?
It does, yeah. And it's like similar to my experience with it of I've tried to explain it, but it's a really tough thing to understand. And I'm definitely one of the people that are way better with it in a professional setting than in a personal setting. Mm-hmm. And for me, the only conclusion that I've been able to come up with is that in our minds, we can kind of objectify it as, in a professional setting, those are our abilities, right? Like, we're getting rejected for our abilities.
Yes.
Right. But in a personal context, I think that self-talk goes back to self-worth. Again, it's not my abilities that are getting rejected. It's me now. Right. And you kind of personalize it a little bit again. So yeah, it's definitely something that I've thought a lot about and have tried to figure out myself.
And I think maybe, and you know what, maybe for some other people, it's the opposite, depending on what their history is, right? Because everybody has a history. Everyone's got their own history. Maybe for you and I, it's been some rejection, more rejection in love. And maybe for other people, it's more rejection in the professional life, and then their self-worth is wrapped in that. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, no. And, because there's lots of people out there that are, very good at, handling rejection and have a healthy relationship with it in their personal lives, but then in their professional lives, it's the opposite. And so, that's why it's been so hard for me to figure out. And I think it is that, that personal story that we all tell ourselves. And there's so much of our own personal experiences that shape that it's hard to
Yeah,
make a blanket
exactly.
statement.
So it's going to be different for everybody, and I think it's our responsibility to go a little bit deeper and understand what does rejection mean to me, and how does it show up in my life, and how would I like it to look like? I think those are really three really key questions around rejection.
For sure. And so when you say like, what does rejection look like, what
Yeah,
do you
what
mean
does
by
it
that?
look like to me, as in how's it shown up in my life is what it looks like. Do I usually run away? Do I run away from it? Right? Do I, like, let's say in the face of
Gotcha.
rejection, am I running away and avoiding it? In the face of rejection, am I meeting it head on? In the face of rejection, am I self-referencing? In the face of rejection, am I projecting onto other people? Because that could be it too, right? It's like
Yes.
they can't take the rejection, so they have to turn it around on the other person and blame things on them. And so that's
Yes.
kind of like,
Yeah.
that's what I mean by like, what does rejection look like for me today? How does it show up in my life?
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. And so for people that, do struggle with rejection, do you have any strategies that you've used or that you've heard of to help them
Yeah,
with that?
I would say there's a reframing it, reframing what that means, like answering those questions is a strategy. A nice reframe that
Yep.
I've heard from a friend of mine was, when you are rejected, or when you put yourself out there in a certain way, looking for an answer, for example, there's one of three options. Either it's a yes, a not now, or there's something better out there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'll say that one more time. Yeah, it's like
Yeah, I like that
it's
a
either a
lot.
yes, it's a not now, or there's something better out there for you. And it's just a lot lighter than like taking the flat no, and then filling in the blank of our own trauma, history, self-worth, self-referencing, self-loathing, right? It's just like, let's just
Yeah.
stick with those three. Hey, it's either yes, it's a not now, maybe later, or
Yeah.
there's something better. I
Yeah.
think that's a really good reframe. Yeah.
Yeah. No, very, very cool. And I like that a lot for sure. Um, and I think that I need to start again, working on it a little bit more, continuing to work on, but I think I'm going to start using that. But for me, like that arrow one hit me a lot too,
Yeah.
of, the after effects, because, that, and having that mental image of being like, okay, like I'm stabbing myself again with this arrow. Like I've been hit. I need to let it go. I need to take it out and I need to let the wound heal. Um, and then just like I was saying before, of for me, my first step was just, almost taking that, not personal side of it, but that view that it's all because of me,
Mm.
taking that out of it, of being, you know, there are millions of reasons for this that have nothing to do with me, and telling myself some of them in every single situation, which helps me get out of my head, right? Of, instead of going down the rabbit hole of, it's because I did this, it's because I said this, it's because I'm like this, it's, well, maybe this happened to them today, you know got me out of my own head and has allowed me to just take a little bit of that sting
Yeah,
out of
man,
it.
I love that. It's just, it could be the hardest thing to reframe and readjust in our lives, though it is very simple, isn't it? It's simple, but it's not
It
easy.
is.
Simple, but
Yes.
it's not easy.
I love that,
Yeah.
actually.
Simple.
Simple
Yeah, those
but
two are
not
different
easy.
things.
Yeah.
Something simple can be difficult, and you're talking about like 26 years of conditioning for you, 32 years of conditioning for me. To expect ourselves
Yeah.
to reframe overnight, it's not realistic. let's be patient with ourselves now that we're aware. Now that we're aware, let's be
For
patient.
sure. And for sure. And that comes back to a lot of, so my own journey is just having that compassion for myself. Right. And like, not be getting down on myself so much because it wasn't an overnight
Yeah.
180. Right. It wasn't, oh, I realized I'm bad with rejection. And tomorrow I wake up knowing that I'm bad with rejection. I'm
Yeah.
totally fine with it. Right. It is that slow, one step at a time, one step at a time, continual progress. So that over a long period of time, you can really see that change. But day to day, those changes are
Yeah,
usually minor.
man. As we're talking right now, there's another question that popped in my mind that it's really good to ask ourselves too in the midst of rejection. And that question
Okay.
is, how is this happening, or why is this happening for me? Instead of
Gotcha. Instead of
exactly
to me.
instead of to me. I think that's a really great question. How is this? What is the lesson here that I cannot presently see, and how is this happening for me?
Yes. Kind of taking that silver lining approach
Yes.
of,
Yeah.
this is happening for me instead of to me. I love that.
And not needing to have the answer to that question right away. I think the inquiry is more important than the answer.
Okay.
Yeah, because the
Gotcha.
inquiry separates
What?
ourselves from the ego.
Yes. Of And I really like that because where my mind goes is sometimes in the moment, you don't know why it's happening for you.
Exactly.
Right. And, it's okay. I got rejected from this job that, I thought I was going to love and would be perfect for me. Um, but, 2 months later, you actually find your real dream job and get accepted to it, and go on to be extremely happy. But if you had gotten that initial job, you never would have
Yeah.
found that dream
This
job.
is why I do the timeline, man. Because
Yeah.
my approach to the timeline was inspired by Steve Jobs. It's quote
Yes.
that I think you know about it. It's connecting the dots, looking backwards, not looking forwards. And when I do a
Yeah.
timeline and I look back at missed opportunities / rejections, and then what came after
Yeah.
that was much bigger and better, and served me in so many ways. So then I look at that and I'm like, well, I'm thankful for that rejection then. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here right now.
Yes.
So then what we do is when we look
Yep.
forward, and when we do experience a present moment rejection, we can then take a second, pause, think about the timeline that we just made, and trust that there's something better on the other side of this rejection.
Yep. Yep. Kind of building that body of evidence of, showing yourself that, look, like all of these positives came from that perceived
Exactly.
negative. Yeah. Love that. Awesome. Is there anything else that we didn't get to that you want to bring up, or anything else that you want to say?
I would say, I'm thinking right now. You know what? I usually give myself 5 seconds to think of something, and if nothing comes up, then I'm just going to leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, man, it was a pleasure as always having you on here, and really loved getting into this topic with
I
you.
love it too. And I'm actually curious. You know what? I do have a question. What are some other topics for this mini series that you have going on, that you have lined up?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them are kind of taken from thoughts that I have, going into, like, from the week, and kind of being mindful of what comes up in my head during the week that I want to address. And so, the next one that I'm gonna do with Nuke actually is the narratives that we tell ourselves. The narratives of our lives and the stories that we tell ourselves that we feel like we have to stick to. And sometimes of seeing, not realizing that those narratives were either put there by somebody else and aren't actually what we want, or are just the, you know, the lens that we see our life through that may not be as accurate
Yeah, that's
as we
awesome.
think it is.
I'll be looking forward
Yeah.
to hearing that episode.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I've really liked going into these specific topics a little bit deeper because it's always nice to hear you know, people's stories and find out more about them. But a lot of times just because of time, you know, you're not able to dig into specific things. And so that's been really cool for me in this process
If
launching
you
the pit
ever
stops.
want to do a little mini episode on the topic of death, let me know.
Okay.
Maybe even Nuke too. I don't know if you would have both of us on, but I think that'd be a really good topic around death, because that's also another thing that people tend to avoid speaking about.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. And so
I love it,
we'll
man.
have to set that up. Cool. Awesome.
All right, man.
Anything
That's
else
everything
from you?
this time. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, no, thank you again for doing this,
Yeah,
and
my
we'll chat
pleasure.
soon, okay?
Take care.